So I'd like to share something for Sukkos that hopefully you won't need, but you might bump into people who do. And that's how you deal with Sukkos if you're not so happy. Okay? It's kind of a psychological truism that when someone tells you you have to be happy, it's even harder to be happy. And if you're not feeling happy, that just makes you more depressed and it gets into a cycle. So what do you do on Sukkos when you're coming into what the Sforim call mochin de katnus? Things aren't going well. Let's take our hero as an example. Let's call him Shmerel. Okay, a gentleman who's coming into Sukkos with the pitum on his esrog down, as they say it. Right, the pitum arup. He's having problems with parnasa, with shalom bayis, with his kids. He's having problems with his learning. He dropped out of Daf Yomi on Brachas Daf Gimel, and just nothing's going. And his pitum falls off his esrog before Sukkos. His uketz on his lulav splits, and his lamdish neighbor came to explain to him that his sukkah may be kosher according to some shittas. This is how he comes into Sukkos. That's the start, and it's downhill from there. He schleps out one night of Chol Hamoed to go daven Ma'ariv, and he gets caught by what I call the simcha police. Okay, somebody comes over to him, sees him, he says, "Hey, why are you looking like that? It's Sukkos. V'samachta b'chagecha, it's a mitzvah." Like, yeah, I'm going through a hard time. He says, "No, man, didn't you read the Rambam? What he says about simcha and Sukkos?" "Yeah, I know I can't." And then he grabs poor Shmuel and he shakes him like a lulav, V'samachta b'chagecha v'yisach sameach. Poor guy. He limps off home to eat his tuna fish sandwich in his barely kosher sukkah. And he thinks to himself, Sukkos isn't for me. Sukkos is for the people that have what to be sameach in, that it's going for them. What can he do for Sukkos? So, like so many things in the Torah, there's so many different aspects to every mitzvah. And if the Torah is given to every single Jew, that means the Torah is shaykh to every single Jew in whatever situation. Let's try to look at the aspect of Sukkos as shaykh to our hero Shmerel. Reb Tzadok Hakohen points out in the Pri Tzadik that Sukkos is really an aspect of golus. Okay, that sounds strange, but many people say the Hiratzon before going into the sukkah. There are a few different nuschos of it, but it talks about the idea that I'm going into golus. Right? It says that when I leave my house, right, a couple of nuschos, it says, B'schus tzeisi mi beisi achutza. The schus of my leaving my house, going out, chashev li bezois kilu hirchakti nedod. Let it be considered as if I went into golus. Or another nusach spells it out more strongly. Im nischayavti golus. If I received the din that I'm chayav to go into golus, chashev li kilu hirchakti nedod. Let this sitting in the sukkah be considered that I went into golus. So Tzadok asks, wait a second, golus is a tsar, right? You think, al narois Bavel, right? It's a sad thing. How can it be if a tsar, mitzvah is potem in a sukkah? If going into the sukkah is going into golus, and going into golus is a tsar, how can you ever be mekayim sukkah? The source for that Yiratzon is actually a psikta. The psikta says, why do we make the sukkah after Yom Kippur? It says, because if our din on Yom Kippur is to go into golus, mal alehem ki'ilu golu leBavel. The Torah considers it by you going to the sukkah as if you went to Bavel. And he brings a pasuk, Ubasad Bavel, Shom tinatzlu, you'll come down to Bavel, you'll be saved there. Shom yigalcha Hashem mikafevecha. There Hashem will save you from the hands of your enemies. So Tzadok asks, why particularly Bavel? Why is going to the sukkah like going into Bavel? Why was that particular pasuk chosen about all the psukim of Golus Bavel? And aren't we happy? One of the many explanations about the simcha of Sukkot is we just went through Yom Kippur. We received Mechilas Avonos. So why are we saying that we have a gezerah that we have to go into Golus after Yom Kippur? Right? Every year we have to go into Golus? So he explains the following. He explains that the mitzvah of Sukkah is going, it's true, into Golus, but it's recognizing what Golus really is. In Golus he says, when Am Yisrael goes into Golus as a nation, or when a person goes into their own personal golus in their situations in life, you're supposed to realize that it's not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's pushed you away. It's not that He's rejected you. That you're under the wings of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even as you're in golus, even as you're going through those troubles. And He says, V'hu ba'atzmu biru kol golus. And that's the purpose of the golus. That's what you're supposed to clarify in golus, to realize that. He says, to be choyse bo yizbarach, b'chol hashibud v'atzoros, in whatever trouble you're going through, to realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here with me. And this is for a purpose. And this is coming from love, and this is leading someplace. Why Bavel particularly? He says because there we saw, looking backwards, after we were in Bavel, what were Am Yisrael zoche in Bavel? Yechezkel had the Gilui of the Ma'aser Merkava, that there was no other Gilui like that. The Torah Sheba'al Peh grew in Bavel. Anshe Knesset Agdola, Hillel HaBavli, it all came from Bavel, the growth in the Torah. Shir Hashirim Rabbah, it says that more tzaddikim were produced in Bavel in the time of Churban, Yosemi bin Binyana. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is never pushing us away from our purpose. He's never rejecting us. He's never telling any one of us, I don't want you, I don't need you, this isn't for you. He wants each and every one of us to reach our potential, our tikkun, and to be able to bring things further. And everything that happens to us in our lives is for that purpose. That's the idea of the sukkah. I'm stepping out of my house. I'm going into golus. But the Jew has the ability to open his eyes and see in the golus and say, I'm in a sukkah. The very word sukkah, the Sfas Emes says, is from the Lashon of seeing, soicha, like it said Yiska, the name of Sarah, soicha b'ruach HaKodesh. You suddenly see your situations in life differently. You're able to do it. And this is something we have to accept. It's there always. Tzadok points out, even after that first Yom Kippur, they received the Luchas Shnias. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Salachti kidvarecha. But they weren't back where they started. Before that, Ani Amarti Elokim Atem, before Am Yisrael at Har Sinai, before Chet Egel, were on the cusp of the Gula Shlema. They didn't go back to that. They started off on the long road that we're still walking on. And yet, they had the mitzvah of Succos and the simcha of Succos. To realize that every time we're moving on, it's getting us closer. Biyom pakti upakadati. It's true from the Cheta Egel. There's something that continues on every year, but every Yom Kippur, every Sukkos, we chip away at it. And every Yom Kippur and every Sukkos, we get closer to that Geula that we're supposed to have. That's the way it is in terms of the golus for Am Yisrael as a whole, but that's there in every personal golus that we have. The big ones and the small ones. And to realize that and to feel the embrace of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the sukkah in those times, with the pitum arup, like you say, when your pitum's pointing down, and you don't have that understanding and all the accompanying things that help us be besimcha, to be able to reach that. I'll finish with something that they brought from the Kotzker Rebbe, which is very appropriate for it. The mice, if you pay attention in Hallel, right, aside from the stuff that we like to sing, there's a lot of sad and scary things in Hallel, right? He talks about afafuni chevle moves, mitzay shol mitzauni, right? There's a lot of things. David HaMelech describes what he goes through, what he went through in Hallel. And in there he says, right, Zeh ashar la'Hashem tzadikim yavovo. You ever tap somebody on the shoulder while he's singing in Hallel? Zeh ashar. Yes, what's the shar? Zeh ashar. It sounds like it's something you can point at. What is it? So the Alter of Kelm said, Oidcha ki ani sani. It says, being able to emote it to Hashem in the time in which I'm in trouble. Vatahili Yeshua. And that itself is the Yeshua. To be able to realize that these things all come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to help me and to move me on. So the Kotzker Rebbe said the following. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Tzadik Beis, talks about the Shira of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was a great poet, a great composer. And they say that if a malach hadn't come down and slapped Nebuchadnezzar in the mouth, he would have said shira that was Magana, the shiras of David HaMelech. His shira would have outshone that of David HaMelech. In the charts, Nebuchadnezzar would have been number one, and David HaMelech's Tillim would have moved down someplace on the chart. But a malach slapped him in the face and stopped it. The Kotzker asked, how's that fair? Nebuchadnezzar wants to sing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Songs are better than David HaMelech. Should be a free market. said, that's not what it means. Nebuchadnezzar was sitting there on his throne with one slave giving him a manicure, and another slave giving him a pedicure, and another slave peeling grapes and popping them in his mouth, and he's singing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, let's say if he gets a pachin upon him, let him get a slap in the face and see if he can sing. He wasn't able to sing, but David HaMelech did. David HaMelech sang, Bevarchu mipnei Avshalom beno. He was running away from his own son, and he sang to Hashem. Tomid Tehilasa B'fi, David HaMelech says, I always sing to you. Chesed u mishpat asher, Hashem, I sing to you when it's chesed, but I also sing to you when it's mishpat. That's who we are, and that's the aspect of Sukkos for everybody, even in those times. And Am Yisrael kept Sukkos in difficult and challenging times, and that's what's called the tikkun of the golus. It's a sweet golus to come into such a beautiful sukkah with the delicious food of Chaim Donut. You should be well, right? And the wonderful music and all the things. And Alavai, that should be the only golus we do. If we do this right, we'll be yotzi all the golus that we have to do. So take that with you. Be sameach, bring that simcha into every aspect of your life. Soak it up here while you're in yeshiva in Yerushalayim, in this very special place with your special rabbeim and your special friends. And lock it in. Hakafas, they say, that locks it in when you go round and sing and sing. It gets it into your very bones. It'll be with you for the rest of your life. And that's the true riches that you'll have and give on to your families, hopefully, as well. A good Mayed, Chag Sameach, all good things. And thank you very much again from the bottom of our hearts.